This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge.
Hey friends, welcome to this week's pod. This is the show for the week of November 4th, 2024. And as you can tell, I am not Jason. He is currently actually at Walt Disney World, hanging out with a bunch of friends. It seems like he's meeting up with people left and right. So I don't have any FOMO at all. But as a special treat, we are happy to be joined by a special guest, David Weezy, who is most likely known to everyone as Weezy on the Discord. David, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being on Vikes Queen's personal podcast. So glad I can make an appearance on it.
Yeah. So you got the pressure is on. But yeah, so in the show, Dave's going to talk about his recent trip to Disneyland and how that went and sort of how it maybe compares to Walt Disney World and those experiences, kind of highs and lows and all sorts of stuff like that. We're going to touch on how the holidays have arrived at Walt Disney World. And then we have our DBC engagement topic. Before we get into that, just a reminder of all our social media accounts. You can find us everywhere on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. We're all at the DBC Pod. And of course, our Discord server to hang out with folks like myself and Weezy. With that, I'll get into the first topic. Like I said, I was calling it goodbye spooky season and hello happy holidays because it seems like there was, like always, there's that quick transition at Disney. I think there was still like some Halloween Horror Nights or something going on. So it was kind of weird in my feed. I was seeing like Christmas stuff at Disney and Halloween Horror Nights.
It's like that time of year. You're seeing all of the holidays. Yep.
Yeah. So, and that did lead to a bit of a discussion. Maybe I'll ask you, Dave, are you someone who like right after Halloween goes right into the holidays, or do you take a breath before you kind of start getting into holiday mode?
I am. I like to take a break in between. My girlfriend is one to rush into the Christmas season. We actually put up our Christmas tree today. So,
oh, wow.
We're in full swing Christmas here.
Nice. Speaking of that, and getting into the full swing, as I mentioned, things are going at Walt Disney World. Jason was in there. He was already posting photos of the Christmas tree in Magic Kingdom and stuff like that. But what I did want to talk about was Disney announced that, as we know, they were having the Epcot festivals of the holidays, but they announced a number of new things are coming this year, and a number of them are at the Communicore Plaza, which I thought was kind of cool, or the Communicore Hall, which I thought was pretty interesting because that's been kind of the biggest complaint about that area is that it seems like kind of just a plain box, not enough going on. Just to go over the highlights, it says they will have an 8-foot tall gingerbread spaceship Earth on display, and 2 new holiday kitchens, experimental prototype cookies of tomorrow, and favorites of festivals past. It'll also include a forest of twinkling trees called Glittering Grove. And just outside the Communicore Plaza, there will be a snowflake decorating and performances of Joyful. So I don't know if you saw this, Dave, if this was something that kind of caught your eye, or either way, what are your thoughts about this? And I don't know, have you been to Walt Disney World for the holiday season at all?
So I actually haven't been for the holidays before, but this year we are actually heading down to December for the holidays. So I've been kind of hyper focused on holiday specific news. And obviously with Communicore being new, that was already going to be something I was going to check out. So kind of adding these holiday add-ons to that space. I'll definitely make a pit stop over there to check out what they kind of have to offer and kind of see what that controversial space is all about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've only been there, once since the hall's been open, and I appreciated the functionality of it. Like when I walked through, there were a ton of people in there just kind of resting, recharging their cell phones, recharging themselves. We went in August, so it was super hot, so people appreciated the air conditioning. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of theming or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see if they go kind of a little bit bigger than they've done so far and make it something maybe people, like you said, will go out of their way a little bit to check out.
Yeah, and if they don't do it at the holidays, I don't know kind of when they would spruce it up. So hopefully we see a good bit of decorations and whatnot in there.
Yeah, they talked about doing stuff for the festivals. They had the one, I guess, kitchen or whatever for the food and wine festival, but then other than that, they mostly just put merch in there, and it kind of just all it did was reduce the amount of seating, which was what people were using the space for the most. It did say there will be some merch there as well, but I don't know. I'm excited about that, especially that gingerbread spaceship Earth. That sounds pretty cool. Like I know there's a lot of photos going about the gingerbread house at the Grand Floridian, and they have stuff in other areas. Is it the carousel? I think they do at the beach club or the boardwalk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that Epcot will have their own sort of gingerbread thing. So we'll see how it comes out. Hopefully they put the lights on it.
And to actually get it all toned up to how the actual.
I'll be all like synced up. So when the show's going on, it's going on inside too. That'd be
alternate
actually
viewing area.
That'd be cool. Or during the fireworks, do Luminous. They have little fireworks. So that's good. So we can get into that a little bit later, but did you pick going down December? Like, is that just what worked out, or are you specifically going because you wanted to check out the holidays?
We wanted to check out the holidays. My girlfriend and I are both lifelong Disney goers, and neither of us have actually ever been during the holidays. When planning when we wanted to do our next trip, it kind of all came together like, oh, let's kind of do a long weekend trip during the holidays to kind of do a Christmas forward trip, kind of not necessarily ride heavy, but kind of focus on all the holiday offerings is kind of how we're going to go about that trip. So yeah, excited for that. Definitely just based on having never been during the holidays and all the FOMO hearing of everyone going every year. So
yeah, that sounds good. I think I mentioned it. I forget if it was last week or the week before that. I'd like to do that sometime, like you said, a holiday focus. We did go down a couple years ago in December, but it was more for my son's birthday. His birthday is December 13th, and it was kind of more or less a regular trip, just with some holiday stuff added. Like we did see candlelight procession and stuff like that, but it wasn't. We didn't go around to the different resorts to check them out and things like that. It was kind of like a regular trip with a little bit of holidays sprinkled in, but doing one like sounds like you're doing that's more focused on getting in the holiday stuff, I think would be fun.
Yeah, we're making sure we see all the gingerbread houses. We're doing the Christmas party, candlelight processional. Just going to try to take in all the decorations and everything, all the treats. Just kind of really focus on things exclusive to the holidays on that trip.
Nice. Good. So that sounds exciting. And I think where are you staying for that?
We'll be on the boardwalk.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's December 12th to the 16th. So kind of Thursday to Monday type trip, extended weekend, if you will.
Oh, so while you're there, you could check out the cake bake shop. And
we're in walking distance, so we might have to try a $23 piece of cake.
See if it's worth it. It's been interesting seeing the reviews of that. I see a lot of people that are... they feel like at least some of the items are worth the cost, but you kind of seems like you might have to pick and be a little picky on which you get. Like some things are worth it and some things aren't, but that the ones that are, that you can tell they're using quality ingredients, and you can kind of get why it's a little bit more expensive than other places. But waiting to hear from more, I guess, regular people versus just the bloggers and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. The people who are going down just for the food reviews. Need to hear more just once every 3-year trip people who head down there and try it out.
Exactly. Great. So I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention about that, or anything else that you kind of saw going on with news-wise with Disney and stuff like that.
Not really. Kind of a slow news week this week, it felt like, after the prior weeks trying to hop on the Universal Epic News. They kind of combated that with their news right after, and it was kind of a slow week last week, all in all.
Yeah, I think so. So it's perfect time for a trip report.
Yes.
So there's a professional level segue right there. So this is actually about a trip that you took. Was it about 3-4 weeks ago at this point, or a little longer?
Yeah, it was middle to the end of September. I don't remember the exact. Or I remember the day I flew home because it was my birthday. But so the teen dates of September, I guess you would call it.
Okay. And it was out to Disneyland. So why don't you start off by giving just a little bit of background, like where did the idea to go out to Disneyland come from? Is this your first time there, that sort of thing? And who was with you on the trip, and kind of just the basics about your trip?
Yeah, so this trip all came together, I guess, back in March. I started being a travel planner, a travel agent, I guess you'd say, on the side. And every year they have a planning event, or a agency planning retreat to kind of just work on skills and everything. And this year's retreat happened to be at Disneyland. So that's kind of where our my idea for going out to Disneyland came from, tagging on this trip. Mm-hmm. So the training was a 2-day experience at Disneyland, but I have been to Disneyland once before, back in, I think it was 2014, so 10 years ago. So no Avengers Campus, Pixar Pier wasn't themed how it is now. So a lot's changed since I've been there. And my travel group was myself and my girlfriend, who has never been to Disneyland except for as a infant. So she had no recollection of it. It was all new to her. So we kind of made a full week out of it, doing a couple days in the LA area prior, like 3 days in the LA doing like a Warner Brothers studio tour, like horseback riding in Malibu. So took in some of the other offerings California has to offer. And then obviously had my 2 days of the agency retreat. And then we had 3 days, my girlfriend and I, experiencing Disneyland by ourselves and taking in all the great offerings it had.
Okay. Did you do in LA any of the like kind of Disney related things, like seeing, either the Chinese theater like it is at Hollywood Studios, or the El Capitan Theater, or kind of any of the, I guess they do sometimes at like the Walk and Waltz footsteps, kind of see some stuff there.
Yeah. So we saw the Chinese theater. That was something I wanted to check out. Definitely very touristy, like Times Square-ish surrounding it. So we didn't spend too much time there, but made a point of at least checking it out. I haven't seen it in 10 years. My girlfriend has never seen it. So it was something cool to check out for both of us and be like, oh, next time we're at Hollywood Studios, there it is. We saw the real one. So that was really the only Disney focused thing outside of when we're out on property that we kind of checked out.
All right. So with the trip, obviously you said you were going out for the travel agent training and stuff like that. But other than that, what were some of your goals that you wanted to accomplish when you went into and kind of doing the planning, especially for the part after the training when it was just you and your girlfriend? What were sort of some key things you wanted to make sure you got accomplished?
Yeah. So some of the main things we really wanted to focus on, being Disney World annual goers, I guess you would say, was checking out things that either are offered at Disney World but have a different version of the ride. So, for example, Pirates is different, Small World is different, things like that. And also checking out different food offerings that wouldn't be available at Disney World. We also did the Halloween party, Oogie Boogie Bash. So, heard great things about that. I have my own thoughts about how.
Yeah, we'll get to that into a little bit. Yeah,
but yeah, I was kind of focusing on different things that we couldn't get at World, and making a point of emphasis of checking them out.
Okay, so after the travel agency plan, how many days did you have? I guess how many days and how many nights did you have for Disneyland?
Yeah, so we arrived on a Monday night, stayed off property at a Sheraton down the road. Then I went in one day without my girlfriend in the afternoon and checked out the parks with a couple other travel planners from the agency. And one of them actually used to work at Disneyland with horses there. So it was great to kind of see both parks with them that evening. So it kind of gave me a foundation of, okay, I kind of remember these parks. They're coming back to me. So when it came time to go with my girlfriend, I kind of had my basis back together of I kind of know my way around these parks. So we had a 3-day park hopper, just her and I, after the agency training. So
okay, so you stayed offsite Monday night, and then it was a Tuesday. You had the afternoon with the agency people, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, where your days.
It would be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's another night that I didn't head into the park.
Gotcha.
Because it was a training heavier.
Oh, that was
day.
still the training. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you stay at that Sheraton the whole time?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a 10-minute walk. It really wasn't bad. Past the CVS on the way, and Walgreens and the Starbucks. So easy if we needed anything to just grab on the way. So it's a great location.
Yeah. I mean, we've only been to Disneyland once, but the off property, like staying off property there is totally different than staying off property at Walt Disney World. When we went, we stayed off property. We stayed at the Howard Johnson at the top of the road, just because they had like family suites and bunk beds that the kids would like and stuff like that. And it was still like a 10, maybe 15-minute walk to the gates or whatever. So it's a lot cheaper than staying the on property hotels there. Are just so much more expensive, and at least that's what we found. I mean, I know people who stay there love them and stuff like that, but it's just it's a pretty steep price difference versus some of the off-property options.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to tour the 3 Disney hotels there, and they're gorgeous hotels, but for 3x the cost of staying off site, you can't justify it with limited benefits of just early entry that you get by staying there. So it's not like World where there's the transportation and all that. Definitely staying off property is a move at Disneyland.
Gotcha. So I guess let's start with the first day you went with your girlfriend. So I guess that would be the Thursday. Did you make a point to start at Disneyland proper or to Disneyland Park, or did you do California Adventure first, or what was your, I guess, strategy going into that first day?
Yeah, so it came down to, so we started at Disneyland, and the reason we started there was based on when we got our Oogie Boogie tickets.
Okay.
So we got our Oogie Boogie tickets for that first night as well, and Oogie Boogie sells out within a day. Even less. So it kind of dictated our trip of what day we wanted to do, kind of schedule around. So we did Disneyland in the morning, Oogie Boogie that evening. So didn't have any downtime during the day or anything, just kind of kept going throughout the whole day there. So yeah, started Disneyland. It was definitely, I knew what the castle looked like. It was funny seeing my girlfriend's reaction of how everyone would classify it, small or it's so cute.
Yeah.
So it's funny actually seeing that in real life, someone's reaction I know to that, not just a like TikTok or YouTube video of someone reacting that way.
Right. So what else did you do that day? I mean, you don't have to go like minute by minute, but just kind of like what were kind of highlights from that first day before the Oogie Boogie, just like the stuff you did at Disneyland Park.
We had it was still called Genie Plus when I was there, I believe. So we purchased Genie Plus. You can't schedule your first one until you tap into the park, so it's a little different than how Disney World's was. So when we tapped in, we booked it was a Matterhorn individual lightning lane for that, and then it was pretty much right at park open that we had that. So we didn't want to just rush over after rope drop and go just knock out a lightning lane. So we headed into Mr. Toad's. So in the Fantasyland area, there's 4 dark rides there, and none of them have lightning lanes. So we kind of used those as, we have 30 minutes until our lightning lane is ready throughout the trip. It's kind of how we knocked out those Fantasyland attractions. And it kind of worked out pretty well because it happened to work like in our favor that, we're in the area. We have 40 minutes until our return time. Let's just go do one of those. So, especially with the size that Disneyland is, everything's so compact and close by that walking from Adventureland to Fantasyland is very easy. So, that day we did a total of 12 lightning lanes before Oogie Boogie. So, just to put in perspective of how many lightning lanes you're able to book compared to World, definitely a lot easier. And I would definitely, being a super user, I like that system. So we took advantage of it as where we could. So did a lot of the Fantasyland rides. We checked out Pirates, did beignets and the breakfast chimichangas that I've heard all about, which were pretty good. I got the chimichanga. My girlfriend got the beignets. She still prefers French Quarters beignets over Disneyland's, but who knows? To each their own on that. That day we also did our one and only ride on the Nemo submarine voyage. Felt like we had to do it to say we did it.
Oh yeah.
Probably wouldn't do it again, like most say, but it's a Disneyland staple, so I had to check that.
Yeah,
out.
well, especially now with 20,000 Leagues being gone for so long at Walt Disney World, you kind of, who knows how long that'll be around at Disneyland. It's a huge piece of property that they could probably do something else with. But.
Yeah, it's like a 15 minute ride too, so it's a commitment once you're on that submarine.
Once you're in that tiny sub, yeah. You mentioned you did Pirates. How did you think, or what were your opinions of it compared to Walt Disney World? I know a lot of people say it's like vastly superior, but some people are like, it's longer, but it's not necessarily better or anything. What were your thoughts?
So I think overall, I would say it's better than Worlds. And I think that comes from the length, but I don't know if the length is necessarily good length. Because kind of when you're going under the when you're going down the drops and going under the railroad,
Yeah.
you're not going through much. You're just kind of going through caves with not much to look at. Well, it's added time. I don't know if it's necessarily value added time, but overall, still a great ride. It's definitely cool. Like when we're coming back up the ramp, when you're returning to get off the ride, you can very clearly see where the railroad is. So I like pointed that out to my girlfriend. She's like, "You're such a Disney nerd." So things like that you're able to like notice if you know the like history of the ride and just kind of about what you're doing, where you are on property while on a ride. So it was definitely cool seeing it. And definitely a lot of the rides, they have their pros and cons compared to World. So that was also something I noticed while doing, like, say, Winnie the Pooh and a bunch of the other rides that's available on both coasts.
Yep. And then you talked about the Fantasyland rides because, like you said, there's the 4 dark rides there. There's the Peter Pan, which obviously is still at Walt Disney World. There's Mr. Toad, Pinocchio, and Alice in Wonderland. Which of those was your favorite?
So we did 3 of the 4. We didn't do Peter Pan just because it was always like a 50-minute wait, and we're like, well, we have this back at World. I liked Mr. Toad's. I knew the story, my girlfriend didn't, but it was also our first ride on property that morning. So kind of got the tone settled for us, like, oh, yep, this is Disney. Yep, here we are. And I liked it the most just because, I don't know, it's one of those stories many people don't know well in the Disney world or in Disney's universe. So it's definitely a cool ride compared to the other 2, personally.
Yeah, we did all of them when we went, and I remember doing Mr. Toad at Walt Disney World when I was a kid, so it was kind of bringing back some of those nostalgic feelings, and it was cool to share it with my kids. In some ways, I think some of the other rides like Pinocchio and Alice are kind of better rides, or like the sceneries and stuff there's more going on. I think Alice is really cool with it being kind of 2 levels and stuff. But there is definitely something about Mr. Toad, and like you said, it's just that it's kind of an unused or lesser used property. You don't see it around very much, and it's kind of got some unique, just kind of the zaniness of it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty unique. And you had a lightning lane, you said, for the Matterhorn, so I guess you rode that.
Yeah, we did Matterhorn, and it definitely puts your back in shape. Doesn't do Space Mountain justice back in World. That's a very smooth ride compared to Matterhorn. I was getting tossed around in there, and when we got off, that was definitely the most sore I was after any ride at Disney World or Disneyland. But definitely cool doing one of those classic Disneyland attractions. You see it from everywhere on property, so one of those rides you have to check out while you're there.
Yeah, I remember thinking it just seemed so kind of random, at least with the placement, where it's like it's kind of right next to the castle, and it's so much bigger than the castle, and like, but then it's also right by the monorail and the submarines. Like, it's just kind of, I guess everything else kind of grew. Yeah, and it wasn't like an opening day attraction. Like, they added it, they specifically put it there, which I don't know. There's probably a lot of history around like why it went where it went and stuff, but it's definitely that draws you in. Like you said, you can see it from everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You're coming down Main Street. That's where I was looking more than the castle. I'm like, wow, it catches your eye for sure. So
yeah. What were some other highlights of Disneyland from that day? And did you eat lunch in the park that day, or food options that kind of stood out to you?
That day we did Bengal skewers, which is over in Adventureland. So it's kind of your typical skewers, meat and veggies on a skewer stick. So we each had a couple of those just to keep us going at around lunchtime, and we also had a Dole Whip as well. One weird thing about the Dole Whip there, it's only available through a mobile order. We didn't realize that, so we walked up and we're like, hey, can we get 2 Dole Whips? And they're like, do you have a mobile order? And we're like, no, do we need one? So quickly had to place one, and the return time was like 15 minutes later, but I'm like, I'm just going to go see if they'll take my number and hand me one. And they did. So clearly a common thing that happens that if you're not a local, you don't know that you need to mobile order the Dole Whips.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know they do mobile order at Walt Disney World, but it's not the only option. So that's a little it's interesting that they only do that. I wonder if, I guess, like you said, locals are maybe like, well, it is what it is. We're used to it.
Mhm.
Whereas at Walt Disney World, you have a lot of first timers and stuff like that. So having things only mobile order might be a little tougher to do there.
Yeah, and it's probably only the size of it's probably if you put two popcorn carts together, it's really they only have like 4 people back there and just nonstop on 3 of the machines and 1 person handing them out. So
Gotcha.
small, tight operation, which is probably why
Yeah,
it's
makes
limited.
sense. Okay. What were your like just overall impressions of that first moment coming into? I guess it wasn't your first moment since you had been there with your colleagues and stuff like that, but just kind of being on Main Street, being in Walt's Park, and I mean, I know when I went, I made sure to look up into his apartment and see the light on and stuff like that. I didn't know if you took time to do all that, and if it kind of hit you a little bit differently than being in Magic Kingdom in Florida.
Yeah, so I would have liked to do that, but unfortunately, they had a lot of scaffolding up.
Oh, I didn't realize it was right around that. Okay.
Yeah, so they had the scaffolding up for railroad construction and the surrounding areas. So couldn't see.
I've seen photos of the scrims like on the train station. I didn't know it was on those areas too. Where
They had it on the apartment, and then I think it was a week after that they came down actually. So unfortunate, like didn't get to check that out. Would have been cool, but yeah, kind of walking down Main Street towards the castle gives you all those nostalgic castle park vibes. Kind of a different level being the original park and everything. So I enjoyed it. My girlfriend was taking it in. She commented immediately, not just that the castle is smaller, but like Main Street is shorter, it's tighter and everything. So kind of got immediately that footprint of everything being smaller, I guess, was kind of her initial reaction. So it was cool going with someone whose first time it was to kind of pace myself and be like, oh, like don't rush through these things. Let's hear, like, this is your first experience here. Let's take this all in. So definitely a cool experience though.
Nice. And so then you said that evening you went over. So did you have hoppers, or were you just doing one park at a time?
We had hoppers because when we bought the tickets for the like a 3-day ticket, the hoppers were included. So this day it was we didn't really utilize the hopper, I guess you would say, because we went over right when we would have been able to check in at for Ogie, actually 20 minutes after. But yeah, so we went over around the 3:20 time frame. The gates would have opened at 3:00 for Ogie, so a little bit after the initial rush, which is okay. Don't need to stand in that line. We actually went in the turnstile instead of waiting in the Oogie Boogie line. We just went in with the park hopper, like a normal ticket entrance, and then got our tickets inside the park. So it's probably saved us a few minutes. Not a big deal, but just something we took advantage of, I guess.
Especially if I guess you were there like right at 3 or something, it would have probably helped more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we walked in with 5 lightning lanes in our pocket going in there. Or I guess throughout that evening between 3:20 and 6:00 when the party started, we walked in with 5 lightning lanes. So hit a lot of the rides because during the party we didn't want to focus on rides. So it was also first time in DCA, so we wanted to make sure we got that excitement out, I guess you would say.
Right. So which ones did you hit up then before the party stuff?
Before the party, we did Web Slingers, Monsters, Inc., Incredicoaster, Goofy Sky School, and Little Mermaid were the 5 that we hit prior. It was my first time doing Web Slingers and being at the Avengers campus, and it was definitely a cool ride. And if you think you're sore after Toy Story Mania, I was definitely more sore after Web Slingers. Shooting your arms out like Spider-Man takes a lot out of you for those 5 minutes.
What'd you think of Avengers Campus overall? And like, are you a big Marvel fan, or like, were you excited about like an Avengers area, or was it just something else to check out?
So neither of us are big Marvel fans, but we were both excited to check it out, just because it's one of those things that you can't get back east at all. So we're definitely excited to check it out. And I don't want to say we're both underwhelmed, but we were expecting more. And I think I'm expecting more just because of all the D23 announcements coming in, like how much I know that land is going to grow. So in my mind, I was visualizing it being a bigger area than it was. It's kind of a small footprint, but I think they did a good job with what they did there so far.
Yeah, since when we went, it was before Avengers Campus was open, so I haven't seen it yet. But that's kind of the general consensus I get. And I was glad at D23 when they said they were adding not just the big e-ticket ride, but a secondary ride as well. I think that'll really flesh out the area and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's needed because right now it's just the 2 e-tickets there, and the Guardians ride backs up into the road. The queue's not long enough for Guardians, so having more place for people to go is definitely gonna be a benefit to that area.
Yeah. Did you do Guardians? And I forget at this point had it already switched over to the Monsters After Dark or whatever.
Yeah. So I think it's at either 2 or 3 o'clock is when it switches over to After Dark. We ended up doing that during the party. We didn't have a lightning lane for After Dark this day, but we did both versions. Very different vibes. It's cool that they do the pre-show differently for it too. So it really sets the theme. It's not just like different music on the ride. It's a completely different experience, even in the queue area leading up to it. So I think we did Monsters After Dark more than we did the normal ride, just based on being in the park in the afternoon more than we were in the morning.
Okay. And what were your thoughts of it compared to Tower of Terror at Hollywood Studios?
We were both Tower of Terror people still after riding it. How you enter the tower and go into the drop chute is different at World than it is Land. It's 2 different chutes versus at Land. You kind of go up and down, and you get off the ride at the same spot you get on the ride, so you don't get that kind of how you would enter the Twilight Zone and like ride out to the drop chute. Something like that is missing there, which would have been a cool additive. I'm sure they could have done cool things, but obviously you're not going to change how the tower is constructed for something like that. So,
right, yeah, I think they had like 8 months or something to redo that ride. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we get into Oogie Boogie Bash? I know you didn't. I don't think you got into a ton of detail on Discord, but you did kind of hint at maybe some of your thoughts of the event, especially compared to some of the rave reviews it gets from a lot of people. So why don't you maybe for people that aren't familiar with Oogie Boogie Bash, give a little bit of an overview of it and some of like kind of the highlights and what you thought about it.
Yeah, so Oogie Boogie Bash takes place at Disney's Disney California Adventure, so different party location than what you would get at Disney World, where the Halloween and Christmas party are both at the Castle Park Magic Kingdom. So cool having a party at a non-castle park, and definitely would help spread out the crowds at Disneyland. But yeah, Oogie Boogie Bash is the Halloween party for Disneyland. Gets rave reviews online. It has all of your treat trails that you would have like you would at Disney World, as well as a parade. No nighttime show, which was kind of a letdown for the cost, I would say. The treat trails were awesome. There's 12 different treat trails. I think it was 8 different characters that you could see, and they had great interactions and everything. And one thing about the treat trails I found cool, having not done any party at Disney ever before, this being my first party. When you got up to the characters on the treat trails, they had 2 separate lines you could go into. Like one, if you wanted to stop and watch and interact. So say for like Ernesto de la Cruz, you could stop and like hear him sing for a couple minutes if you wanted to before progressing, or you could just walk through and get your candy. So how they kind of designed those lines, that was definitely a great thing. They probably knew that from experience of, people are going to stop the whole line. So kind of having those 2 avenues to go through was definitely a much needed thing, and it worked out great for us to check out the characters we wanted to see.
Yeah, it's interesting that they have the characters as part of like the candy trails, because obviously at Walt Disney World, it's the candy trails are kind of separate, and they're really, you just go to a spot and you get your candy. Like there's not really a trail to them, and then the character meets are all separate from that. So it's an interesting concept to put it together like that and make it sort of integrated. But I agree with what you're saying, that it's a smart idea that if people are just like, I've already seen Ernesto de Cruz the last year or whatever, I just want to get some candy, it doesn't get bottlenecked as much as it would. So that's a good structuring.
Yeah, and we weren't there necessarily say for the candy, like it wasn't a main draw for us. Kind of a nice additive. I don't think we did any of the trails that didn't have a character on it. we didn't really need the candy to fly home with. Didn't need that checked bag weight or anything. So,
Sure.
wasn't an emphasis for us to get the candy, but more just checking out the characters, checking out everything Ogie had to offer.
Gotcha. So, which of the characters, I guess, were either your favorite or just like stood out to you as being memorable?
Ernesto de la Cruz is definitely my favorite. He took song requests too from people in the crowd, so that was kind of funny. He wasn't just singing like the same one or two songs over and over.
Oh wow,
again.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. So he'll do like non-Coco songs and stuff too.
He sang one Halloween song that I didn't recognize from Coco. I also really couldn't pinpoint what it was tied to, but it definitely wasn't a Coco song.
Okay.
So it was interesting seeing that, because I expected it to be like "Remember Me" over and over again.
Exactly. Yeah.
20
That's
minutes.
what I would have thought too. Yeah.
No, so he played along with the crowd, took the request. So that I think he was the most memorable. Then Sid over on Pixar Pier from Toy Story. That was another good one. Just seeing how he interacted with the crowd, kind of the character. He fit the character well. Whoever was performing as Sid that evening he was doing a great rendition of Sid. So I enjoyed him as well.
Okay. And then you said there was a parade that was part of it.
Yeah. So we watched the first parade. We were originally planning on doing the second, but the first parade everyone was lined up. We walked out of Ogie's treat trail and it was parade time. We're like, well, we have the second row and there's small kids in front of us. Like, we'll be able to see the parade perfectly from here. So we hung out, saw the first parade. The Headless Horseman was something I really wanted to see. Got to see that, which was really cool seeing in person. I've obviously seen the videos online, but seeing it in person was something real special. And then the parade was a lot shorter than I thought it would be. Having watched the Boo to You parade a lot more than Ogie's parade. I think it's Frightfully Fun or something. I forget.
That's what it is. I think it's Frightfully Fun. Yeah.
So different. It was definitely a short parade, I felt, for the price and the comparison to what World offers for the parade. There's still a good parade nonetheless, but felt like it could have used a few more floats or
segments. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I think in the past they might have done a World of Color version for the Halloween party, but I guess they're not doing that now, obviously.
Yeah. So World of Color was down while we were there
okay.
for refurbishment. So we didn't get to see it even during a normal evening. But when looking it up, it looked like they only had the Halloween version it was 2019, I believe. So it was really only like a 1-year thing, which seems like it would be something easy to have as an overlay, but I obviously don't know how the water fountain engineering works for that, but would have been nice to have a nighttime show tied to the party in some way, because it was really parade and treat trails was really the offerings, and obviously limited wait times for the rides.
Yeah, that's what that was going to be my next question, was what else was there? I guess I assume there was just kind of the scenic and the atmosphere and stuff like that was set up as all spooky and Halloweenish and stuff like that, but there wasn't really any other special things. I didn't know. Did they have, I guess, special food or anything like that?
Yeah, so the only Oogie Boogie behind the paywall special food, there's a special churro, which we didn't check out just because we had a churro earlier in the day to try out the Disneyland churros, which are better than World's. And then they also, at Flo's over in Cars Land, they had different sauced chicken tenders. So we checked that out for our dinner that evening right at 6:00. We're in line for that. It was a garlic parm and orange chicken, which were all right. Nothing to rave home about, but to say at least we had specific food tied to the party. We wanted to check those out.
And I know you said you could get into the park at 3 with your ticket, and then wasn't the party starts at 6? So
yeah, party was from 6 to 11, the actual party specific times.
So 5 hours dedicated for the party.
Yep. So because I think World is 7 to midnight, so same amount of party hours, same amount of hours you could be in the park, just shifted an hour earlier than what you would get at World.
Gotcha. And was that enough time for you to get everything done that you wanted to, or at least pretty much?
I would say pretty much. Maybe if we wanted to do all 12 treat trails, probably wouldn't have had time to do all of those. But we hit the ones we wanted. I think we did 7 or 8 of the 12, and with 4 of them being the candy only trails. So hit what we wanted. Did a couple rides. We ended the night on back-to-back Radiator Spring Racer, since the line was only 20 minutes, and that's normally 90 minutes to an hour. So made sure to take advantage of that at the end of the night.
Did they do any overlay or anything for that, or is it just that it's a shorter line?
Just a shorter line, but the whole Cars Land's all done up like it would be for anyone, but nothing specific to Ogie there. They had the Cars characters, so you had like Vampire Mater out there. That was specific to the party. So they had the cars dressed up in their Halloween costumes specific, but nothing tied to Radiator Racers.
Gotcha. So I guess overall, what were your thoughts on Oogie Boogie? And I guess, would you recommend it to people if they're out there and have never done it, or is it something you'd look to do again?
I think it was worthwhile doing once. I don't know if I would need to do it a second time. It was a hefty price tag for, I think, what it offered being a party. Yeah, you get the shorter ride times, but party exclusive things, I don't think it really was enough for the heavy price tag. And we're there in September, so it wasn't even the highest price either. So definitely, if you haven't done it before, I would recommend it. But if you've done it before, I think many would also say not worth doing a second time.
Gotcha. Okay. So after that, then you had 2 more days that I guess you were bouncing between Disneyland Park and California Adventure. Just kind of in the spirit of time, just how did those days go, and what were some highlights? I know if there were any key dining things you did, or just, some of the things you really wanted to accomplish that you hadn't yet.
Yeah. So the next 2 days, we alternated which parks we started at. So Friday we started at DCA and ended at Disneyland. One thing about Disneyland, they only do fireworks Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So with this being now the weekend, it was the first thing that we could actually see fireworks at the park. So that's why we made sure to do Disneyland later that evening. So started in the morning. We were going to rope drop Radiator Springs Racers and ride together, but with we didn't have early park entry being off property.
Right.
And it was a nightmare. The line was all the way down Route 66, like outside of the Cars area. So we ended up doing single rider for that, and it was about a 20-minute wait for that. Wasn't too bad, but for what it was, I think I would have probably rope dropped somewhere else and tried to bang out a lot of the other attractions. While everyone else who was at the park was probably in that Cars Land. So just something to keep in mind if you plan on heading out to Disneyland. Probably don't rope drop anything in Cars, and try to take advantage of limited crowds elsewhere. Then we did all of the Pixar Pier rides that morning as well. So we just kind of bounced from like the Golden Zephyr to the Jumping Jellyfish, Symphony Swings, the Inside Out ride as well. So took advantage of those 5-minute waits, kind of hit all the rides out there, all the Disneyland exclusives, because that was a point that we wanted to make while we're out there of checking out those rides. Then one of my girlfriend's must-dos this trip was the Sourdough Vampire Mickey in San Fran, Tokyo, or whatever that land's called. So we made sure to get one of those, and it was like a 4-pound Vampire Mickey sourdough loaf.
Oh, wow.
It was like $11, and we ended up taking it back to Denver with us. That's how much it was. Like, I think that when we bought it, we each just had one of Mickey's ears, and we're like, well, we're not even we're not even a third of the way through, so let's just put this in the backpack. So it was a good snack to just kind of have, like, if you needed a quick bite while waiting in a line. And then parked up over to Disneyland that evening, and didn't really hit too many rides that evening, but kind of one of the cool things about Disneyland is they have the Castle fireworks and they have Fantasmic in the same park, and that was something we wanted to check out, both of those. So how we did that was we got a Fantasmic dining package at Ranchero. I forget the full name of the restaurant, but it was the cheapest one. It's like $35. We each got a steak, some rice, and other Mexican flared foods. And then we also got a reserved seat for Fantasmic. And we had the second showing for that. I specifically chose the second showing so we'd be able to see the fireworks because they only do the fireworks for the castle at 9:30 while Fantasmic runs twice. So to be able to see both, we wanted to make sure we did the later option for Fantasmic. And with Disneyland, like I said, being so much smaller and so much more compact, there's multiple viewing places. You could do like a Small World, but it was under construction, so you would have been looking at it through scaffolding. You could do Main Street. We actually chose to do it out in Galaxy's Edge, which was
cool.
Okay. So it was the Rising of the Fire, I believe the show's called, and you see all the fireworks. There's no projections, but it's all done to to Star Wars themed music. So it's a very cool Disneyland exclusive experience, which was something that we wanted to take in, all those Disneyland exclusives. So I wouldn't say neither of us are giant Star Wars fans, but we like Star Wars, but we're not like Star Wars super fans. We're not watching all the Disney Plus shows. But it was cool, kind of that different way to experience fireworks in the park. Definitely something I think that would be cool at Hollywood Studios if they added that there. Definitely something I think that would be popular. I think Disneyland actually just added a dining package for.
They did, yeah. I think you just get food from like a platter or whatever from Docking Bay 7, and then I guess there's like a reserved seating area or something like that for it. But I didn't realize that. So because I knew about it, and I guess I didn't put two and two together. So it uses the same fireworks that are going off behind the castle or whatever for that, except instead of the Disney music being played, it's Star Wars music being played, but kind of like two uses out of the same fireworks kind of.
Exactly. There's no projections. It's just the same fireworks that you see from behind the castle. And you're standing next to the Millennium Falcon. Everyone has their lightsabers out beforehand. The cast members, anyone who had a lightsaber, they had a little thing like 5 minutes before the fireworks went off. Everyone lit their lightsabers and everything. So cool experience for anyone who likes Star Wars and fireworks, seeing that alternate viewing experience.
That's pretty cool. I wonder, I've kind of mentioned ideas like this before, but I wonder if they could do something like that once Villains Land gets built at the Magic Kingdom, like make that an alternate viewing spot for the fireworks, but leveraging the same fireworks, but then like using Villains music or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. I think Disney World could definitely benefit from that, spreading out the crowds from Main Street. I know I'll check that out if there's an alternate viewing area at Disney World, having seen it on Main Street before. If I could see it somewhere else, I would.
Cool. And what were your thoughts of their Fantasmic?
Yeah, so after the fireworks, we had about 45 minutes until our Fantasmic show started, and you can get in 30 minutes before. We walked over about a 5-minute walk, and they actually let us in 40 minutes early to like the Fantasmic area, which worked out great for us because at Disneyland, you sit on the ground to watch Fantasmic. And most people were trying to go up to the front, like right against the Rivers of America, and I saw 2 trash cans at the back part of it. I'm like, I can rest my back against that while I sit. So we got backrest while everyone else didn't really have a backrest. So I wouldn't say sitting on the ground is the best way to experience Fantasmic, but obviously that's what you have to do at Disneyland. But in terms of the show, I think it was great. Obviously, not having the dragon is a little bit of a letdown. Obviously, that Con of Fire, they don't have it anymore or utilize it anymore, but you're right on top of them, unlike at Hollywood Studios where you're in the grandstands. You're not as close to the action, so you're no more than 10 feet away from Rivers of America. So it's definitely cool being on top of the show, on top of the characters, and there really wasn't a bad seat, being that we had the cheapest dining package. We weren't exactly centered, but more off to the left-hand side. But it still was a great view of seeing everything in the show.
Yeah, that sounds great. Because when we went to Disneyland for both that and World of Color, which was playing, we had done the dining package for World of Color, but I still found the whole like viewing area to be like less than ideal, and getting in and out of areas it kind of really like detracted from the shows for me. But I but it sounds like you had a pretty good experience with this one, and they didn't have, I don't, or either we didn't do it or they didn't have at the time the dining packages for the Phantasmic. So it sounds like that was a good use of funds to
Exactly.
kind of get that spot for it. So
yeah, for $35, I mean, we're gonna have to eat anyway, so getting
Right.
that reserved seating and not having to deal with figuring out the best spot to watch Fantasmic from, just get that guaranteed seating. It was definitely worth the cost to us.
Cool. So any other highlights from the trip or anything that you wanted to hit on? I don't know if we got through kind of everything you wanted to touch on yet.
The only last thing would be on Saturday. So I guess Thursday we did the first, like Disneyland, then Oogie Boogie. Friday we just park hopped once in the middle of the day. And then Saturday we just treated it as one big park. Just actually got to the point that we park hopped, I think it was 4 or 5 times, and my Magic Band didn't work the last time. I'm like, I reached the maximum amount of like park hops like per day. It was weird. It didn't work. I looked there. I'm like, wait, can we even go in? But we're able to. No issues. No limit to how many times you park hop. But the reason we're park hopping so many times was one thing we noticed at Disneyland, when you're mobile ordering food, at World, you normally can get a window like 15, 30 minutes out. Disneyland, if you're ordering at lunchtime, you had to order in the morning. You couldn't order right before. It was like an hour and a half out would be the closest time frame. So that last day, we just chose a time that we're like, all right, we'll go ahead and eat. But then we had a lightning lane at the other park so it's just, we kept bouncing back and forth. And then like Matterhorn was down in the evening. Then when we tried to ride, Indy was too. So a couple times we had to just bounce back and forth that we didn't necessarily want to do, but with how close the parks are, it's really not an issue. It's really one big park if you want to treat it that way.
Yeah, when we were there, it was back still. They had the paper fast passes, but it was same thing. We would like run back and forth like to get the paper fast passes. We'd like send one person over to like the other park and then come back and stuff like that. But it's definitely a different experience than at Walt Disney World, where it's spread out. Yeah. So thinking about that and kind of the schedule you had and the planning, is there anything that you would do differently if you had to do the planning over again?
The one thing I think we would do differently would be mobile ordering was an issue our first 2 days until we kind of got the hang of it. And then luckily lightning lanes, I knew which ones to kind of book. I researched that a lot, but the one thing I completely forgot about our first day was the virtual queue for the Haunted Mansion overlay.
Yeah.
So luckily it was we tapped into the park. I think it was like 7:30 for an 8 o'clock rope drop. I didn't get a virtual queue until almost 10 o'clock, and I was still able to get it in that first drop. So kind of got lucky on that, but with how many people, the throughput of Haunted Mansion, it was no issue getting that at all. But I don't know if I would do Disneyland too differently. I think I would treat more of it how I treated Saturday, of just treating it as one big giant park, and not kind of sticking to, oh, well, we have park hoppers, let's stay here until 2 o'clock or whatever, like you would at Disney World. We're at Hollywood Studios, let's stay here before going to Epcot in the evening. Like,
yeah,
with how close they are, I would just truly treat it as one big park. It's no more than a 45-second walk between the two parks. So I think if I were to go again, I wouldn't segregate my days as much. Morning, night, just really whatever we want to do, just go do. But I think that also comes with the luxury of having now been, that we wouldn't feel needing to do those must-do things that aren't at World.
Gotcha. And do you think you had 3 full park days? Was that enough? Do you think that was the right amount of time? So again, if you were giving advice to somebody who was planning their first trip, would you say 3 full days is a good amount to do?
I would say 3 is the correct amount. I think at the end of the third, we're like, all right, we have hit now everything we wanted to do. Obviously, we're there rope drop to close every of those 3 days. So that worked in our advantage for trying to hit everything we wanted to do. 2 days, I don't think you'd be able to hit everything you wanted to do with how big Disneyland is. I mean, think about it. They have Galaxy's Edge on top of a whole castle park. So like just the sheer volume and amount of attractions in that park. If you want to hit everything, it's almost Disneyland's a 2-day park and DCA is a 1-day park, but with how close they are, I would never not get a hopper for them. So,
gotcha. And I guess just any other overall thoughts to your trip? And I did want to get into your thoughts now, having, you're like you say, go to Walt Disney World like at least once a year. Now having been to Disneyland, how do you think they compared? And what jumped out at you as maybe that is better at Disneyland, or maybe that's actually better at Walt Disney World or something like that?
Yeah, so the characters just roaming around at Disneyland were awesome. Like anywhere you looked, you would see a character just walking, and not just at like a photo op place. They're just walking amongst you, and they don't have a cast member with them. It's just, you would see, like we tapped in and it was just Cinderella before the train station. No other cast member nearby, at least in costume or anything, or in uniform. There probably was in general street clothes, but just basically feeling like the characters are one with the guests was cool. One thing I think that World actually does better than Land is the live like entertainment. So all the shows and things, there really weren't many offerings at Disneyland we found, which going rope drop to park close, we definitely would have liked to mix in a time to just kind of get off our feet. So we actually utilized the monorail for that.
Oh, okay.
We're like, we could just go sit and do a loop on the monorail and treat that as a show, I guess you could call it, to just get off our feet for those 10 minutes, because they don't make you get off at the other stop. They just let you go round trip back to inside Disneyland.
Gotcha. And of the attractions that are at both places, which ones do you think were like way better at Disneyland, and which ones were maybe, do you think, actually better at Walt Disney World?
Winnie the Pooh, I would say, was much better at Disneyland. The ride vehicle is different, so it kind of like bounces you around in a different manner than what Worlds does, and also what you kind of see within the attraction is a little bit longer, so more to that story. Filler Magic's definitely better at Disney World. It's a bigger auditorium for it, so kind of a better show experience. And then I know one of the other ones that's controversial is Big Thunder, with the exception of the dynamite scene when you're going up towards that last like little section of the track. I think the actual track layout is better at World. I think it's just like a better roller coaster, toss you around experience, if that's what you're looking for in the ride. But with the exception of the dynamite, I think Worlds is actually better, which is not a popular opinion. And then obviously I didn't get to experience the original mansion. I only got to experience the overlay with Nightmare Before Christmas, but I think that was my favorite ride out of them all. I did not know they went. I didn't want to watch a ride preview of that, but it was a far superior experience to even a normal Haunted Mansion. Like they went all out on that. Everywhere you looked, there was something tied to the movie. It was truly, I think, my girlfriend and my favorite attraction. I guess probably outside of Radiator Racers, but definitely
nice.
Top tier.
Great. Well, I'm glad you got to experience that one. It was up when we went to, and I had the same feeling afterwards. I was like, this isn't just like a little overlay. It's like a completely different ride almost. And, yeah. So any other kind of final closing thoughts or advice you might have for people that are going to do their first trip to Disneyland?
The one thing I would say is do it. If you've been to Disney World, say 5 times in the last like 7 years, mix in that Disneyland trip, because while it will feel the same in some ways, it's definitely a whole different experience, and you will feel like it's kind of your first time at one of those parks. Having been 10 years ago, my dad was the one kind of leading the way on that, so it was my first time kind of planning that trip. But you still get those Disney feelings, but it also is a fully different Disney feeling there. So if you're even debating about doing a Disneyland trip, I'd say pull the trigger and go for it.
Great. Well, thanks for that. That was really interesting and useful. And I think hearing some of your takes about positives and negatives and kind of advice, I think is really helpful, because I know there's a lot of talk, I think, on the Discord and stuff like that, of people maybe thinking about doing a Disneyland trip or stuff. So it's really useful.
Yeah.
Thoughts. So let's move on. We are approaching our hour mark, but I thought we'd try to quickly get in the Disney survey. Maybe we'll save the DBC engagement for when Jason's back.
Sure.
But I was going to do the Disney survey of Get to Know Weezy. So I'm going to ask you a number of questions, and kind of just off the top of your head, what you would say. It's all about kind of your experiences with Disney and that sort of thing. So first question is, when, if you remember, when was the first time you visited a Disney theme park, and roughly how many times have you been to a Disney park?
Yeah, so the first time I would have been an infant, so I don't remember exactly really anything from that trip. But in terms of how many times I've been, I would say it's probably double digits now to Disney World and twice to Disneyland. Growing up, I would go pretty much every year, just my dad and I. My brothers are older than me, so they're in college by the time I was in middle school. And then my mom isn't much of a theme park goer, so it'd just be my dad and I would do like a half spring training, half Disney World trip every February break that I had from school. So pretty much every year while growing up, I went. And then after COVID, kind of picked up going again after I finished college and everything.
Nice. So of all the different individual Disney parks you've been to, which is your favorite?
I actually think it's current version of Hollywood Studios. I say that because there's so many e-tickets, there's all the shows, and a great nighttime entertainment. I know people don't really like how small it is and kind of can feel like, oh, this could be the one park I skip. It's either that or Animal Kingdom everyone skips. But I think it has all the e-tickets there. So it's really, to me, it would be hard to skip. So I think it's actually Hollywood Studios. It doesn't have the best food, but in terms of attractions, shows, and having that nighttime entertainment, it's right up there for me.
Okay. And what are your top 5 Disney attractions that you've written?
Top 5 attractions. All right. Going to do one in no order. I'm going to do no particular order.
Yeah.
Radiator Racers, I think, has to be on the list. I think that would probably be the only one from out west. And then Expedition Everest, I love. I also love Safari. So that's 3. Hollywood Studios, Toy Story Mania. That's probably my favorite ride on all of Disney's property.
Oh, wow.
I know it's a little bit older, but my dad and I, just like growing up, I have the good memories of him and I always going at it, trying to get the high score. And actually, sorry, he lost me at that ride when it was paper fast passes, and I was like 10 years old. We got separated, so kind of a running joke in the family that's a nostalgic ride for the two of us, but we also like the competition of that ride. And then I think you have to put Cosmic Rewind Guardians on that list. I think those would be my top 5 there.
It's a nice list. What is your favorite Disney resort and why?
So, although I've been so many times, we actually stayed at Swan and Dolphin pretty much every time growing up. My dad traveled for work a lot, so he had Marriott points to stay there. So I've only stayed at Wilderness Lodge and the Grand Floridian, and then obviously next month I'll be staying at the Boardwalk. But between the two I have stayed at, it's Wilderness Lodge, and it's not close between the two. Obviously, Grand Floridian, for what it is, it's awesome if you're into that like Victorian style, that upper echelon styling. But Wilderness Lodge kind of escaping you from where you are and kind of truly making you feel like you're in the woods, secluded and everything. And that lodge is awesome, having been to the national parks and everything. Yeah, I would say Wilderness Lodge between them. So really haven't stayed at too many. So
yeah,
it's fun of a name.
My next question was going to be, what's your least favorite resort you've stayed at? But I guess by default, that makes it the Grand Floridian.
Yeah.
The next question, and I put rank them. It doesn't have to be like a formal ranking, but just kind of like what's your preference of these different types of line ride or systems. So standby, virtual queues, fast pass, paper fast pass plus, Genie Plus, and Lightning Lane Multipass. Like, which of those systems is kind of your preference, or like kind of how would you rank them?
Genie Plus number 1, but I'm also a super user of that, so I know how to like gamify the system, and Disneyland got 12 of them in one day. Yeah. So I think I have to put that number 1 just based on how I'm able to use that functionality of it. I do very much like virtual queues. I think they're very beneficial. Like for Guardians, you can get on Cosmic Rewind in about 30 minutes. The second that goes to standby, that's going to be an hour and a half line at all times. So I think the value that virtual queue adds, yeah, it's a headache to have to tap in and try to get it, but if you get it, and most people do if you know what you're doing, in the Disney World universe, I think the benefit of that is great. And then just being how I tour, just being two people when I was growing up, just my dad and I, and now my girlfriend and I, not traveling with kids or anything. I don't think the new the single pass system is going to be great for us, just because we don't really need to plan like a midday break for small kids or anything. We're kind of more we don't go with plans. We kind of let the day present itself to us. So I think that will be kind of limiting to us. So when you put a price tag next to that, I kind of put that a little bit lower. And obviously, standby is standby. It works for some attractions. Some attractions it's not as beneficial. That was one of the cool things about Disneyland. Not every ride had that skip the line process, so those standby lines did move pretty quick. So
yeah. Okay. Moving on to kind of more characters and movies. What are your top 3 favorite Disney characters?
Simba, I would have to put number 1. Big Lion King fan. Just kind of growing up with watching Lion King. I know I always watched that as a kid, so that kind of sticks with me. Nemo was another one that came out when I was kind of a kid, so that was one that stuck with me as well. Obviously, Finding Dory was the sequel that came out probably, I think it was when I was in high school, but I still made a point of emphasis to go see it. And then for a more recent one that I've kind of grown with, I would say, I don't want to say Inside Out because I didn't really care for the first one, but the second one was awesome. Obviously, this past year has kind of taken over the world for everyone, but I'm going to pivot and say the Star Wars universe, if I can kind of take that as a whole. I watch it. I know I watch it with my girlfriend's dad. He always has it on TV whenever we go visit him. So I would say that's probably my like third IP/movie franchise that I kind of stick with.
Okay. And then the last question I was going to ask you is, what Disney attraction would you want to see a film based on? So one they haven't done. So like they've done the Haunted Mansion, they've done Jungle Cruise and Pirates and stuff like that. So what's one that they haven't done yet that you think could make it for a good film franchise?
I think that one's easy for me. Expedition Everest. I think that could be a cool one of having to go find the Yeti or whatever. It could be a cool adventure story. And then, oh, you find the Yeti. Now you have to get away from the Yeti. Something along those lines, because kind of following what the attraction is, you find the Yeti and then the Yeti kind of scares you and you get away from the Yeti, I guess you could say. But I think that could be a cool one, just to kind of see what they could do with it. I think there's something there that Hollywood writers could obviously make a movie around that I can't formulate a good idea for, but I think there's something there.
That could be fun. I mean, there's like, I guess that one scene in one of the Indiana Jones films, but it has almost a feel of like an Indiana Jones type property, but obviously not starring him, but just kind of around Everest and what they're trying to achieve and stuff like that. And then I guess you have to have some sort of like race down the hill that sort of feels like a roller coaster or something like that. But yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we got to know Weezy a little bit better. So thanks for that. Thanks for being open to that.
Of course.
And I think with that, is there anything else you wanted to kind of share or say or anything like that? Otherwise, we can wrap up.
Yeah, not really. I appreciate you having me on the podcast this week. I know Jason seems to be having a great time down there, and hopefully I was a good stand-in.
I keep tempted to be like, stop posting pictures. Like, enjoy yourself.
But hey, he always likes when we post pictures. He always
that's
comments
true.
Stuff. He likes just seeing what people are doing throughout the day. So he's sharing that back with everyone else in the Discord. So
great.
If you're not in the Discord, definitely hop in the Discord and check out what everyone's posting in there.
All right. Well, that's a good plug for that as well. So thanks for coming on. I think I did ask Dave where his best place to find him on social media, and he basically said just on the Discord is the best place to find him. So that's what you have to do, everyone. So with that, I think we'll wrap up the show. Like I said, we'll save the DBC engagement, I think, for next week, since we're already over the hour mark for when Jason's back. But thanks for all the response we got from everyone. But if anybody didn't chime in yet, you still have another week to do that. And I think with that, we'll say take care, everyone, and have a good week.
Take care, everyone.